Sure are you that we can avoid a recession, particularly given that we've just had the 14th interest rate rise in little over 18 months?
Well, the Bank of England forecasts today say that we will avoid recession, and in a year's time we'll get inflation down to about 3%, 2.8% I think is the number. So although it's very tough when interest rates go up for families or for businesses that have got loans, what those forecasts are saying today is that if we stick to the plan, it is working, and we will end up with a soft landing and we can avoid a recession. But what you're talking about is a very fine judgment, which is what we pay the Monetary Policy Committee to do completely independently of politicians, because we want to make sure they get it right.
You and the Prime Minister have just granted 100 new drilling licences in the North Sea for oil and gas. Some protesters have taken it upon themselves to scale the Prime Minister's personal residence in North Yorkshire in response to that decision. How would you describe those protesters, Chancellor, and that form of protest?
Well, I would just say that protesters should obey the law. And with respect to that decision, I would also point out that everyone says that in the transition to net zero, we are going to continue to use gas, and gas from our own gas fields in the North Sea uses about a third of the carbon of gas that you import from the other side of the world. So this is actually a pro-climate, pro-energy independence, sensible, measured decision.
Is that not a step too far to scale the Prime Minister's house?
Well, do I approve? Of course I don't. But they should obey the law, and it's for the police to make sure they do.
Nigel Farage has been proved right, hasn't he? Coutts did curtail his bank accounts for political reasons, as made clear in the memo that that Farage managed to get from Coutts. We've seen the CEO of NatWest and Coutts resign. Should the chairman of NatWest now be considering his position?
Well, that is a matter for the NatWest board. But what I would what I would say is that as a major shareholder in NatWest, we were very concerned that after this error of judgment, which was conceded by NatWest, they were following the course they were. Why? Because in a free society, being able to say what you believe is a fundamental human right. But in the modern world, we all need bank accounts. So if you have to worry that you might be expressing a view that someone in a bank doesn't agree with and you could lose your bank account, that has a chilling effect on free speech. That is not acceptable. It is also against the banking regulations. It's effectively against the law. So today I've written to the regulator that has the power to put big fines on banks, and I've said I want to know, is this widespread? Was it a one-off thing, or is it more widespread? And what are we doing about it to make sure that banks obey the law?
But the chairman backed his CEO. Howard Davis backed Alison Rose.
Yes.
What kind of judgment does that show?
Well, they changed their mind. And the reality is that NatWest got this wrong, plain and simple. The board has taken action. What I'm now wanting to make sure is that this isn't more widespread, because I think this would be a very, very big step in the wrong direction, and we need to stamp it out if it is.
Around 250,000 GB News viewers and listeners, Chancellor, have signed our Don't Kill Cash petition because they're concerned increasingly, particularly elderly and vulnerable people, they can't use cash in the shops where they want to shop. What would you say to those people who are concerned that we mustn't kill cash? Would you encourage them to back our campaign?
I would say two things. I would say, first of all, any economy has to be run for the benefit of everyone, and that includes your most vulnerable, older people who may not have credit cards and depend on cash. And it's very important they can access services in the way they've always accessed them. So that's number one principle. Number two principle is relates to what we were talking about with Nigel Farage and debanking. For many people, there is an anonymity in the way they use cash, which is an intrinsic part of being in a free society where corporations and the state can't keep tabs on every single way that you spend money. So yes, we're moving to a more cashless society. That's very convenient for lots of people. It's very good for lots of retailers. It had lots of advantages, but we need to bear those things in mind.
And final question. We have, of course, a target in the UK that new petrol and diesel cars will be banned, sales of new petrol and diesel cars by 2030. The EU have shifted that back to 2035 in the face of technological realities, practical difficulties of rollout, the need to upgrade national grids. Why should UK motorists suffer more with an earlier deadline?
Well, I think that deadline is important because it encourages a lot of investment, such as the new Gigafactory, the electric battery factory that Jaguar Land Rover said they would build just a few weeks ago in Somerset. That's going to create 4,000 new jobs. So if you want to encourage that investment from all over the world, you have to have a clear deadline. But what the Prime Minister has said is that as we transition to electric vehicles, we need to do so in a way that is proportionate and sensible and takes account of the people who will still be driving vehicles that aren't electric. And so that's what the Conservative approach is. We say, yes, we're going to make this change. We're going to do it sensibly.
You're sticking with 2030?
We're sticking with 2030, but we're going to do it in a pragmatic way.
Chancellor, thanks for talking to GB News.
Thank you.